All right, and welcome to everybody's favorite night of the week. It is Monday night, and I know Monday day is challenging for a lot of you. So you have to be rewarded, especially you Gen Xers who are out there actually laboring, not like these lazy millennials, right? Not like these and Gen Z. Let's just not even started with Gen Z. You faced your Monday. You want to chill. You want to kick back. You want to relax. You want to have a good time. You want to watch a little retro serial? Well, that's what we're here for. We're here for you watching retro serial. Let's bring on our guest today. As always, we have with us Thrash Pondo Pons. How you doing, my friend?
Superman. I'm doing Superman.
All right, Superman. I'm doing. Oh, that was a good one. That was really good. And as I had promised, our special guest tonight is Chris from Redbeard Video. He's here to answer all your questions and generally just kind of have a live discussion with you guys leading the way about prog rock. And this is kind of the format that we do. I normally like to have a guest on with just kind of me and Thrash Pondo and just talk about the the issue, whatever it is. And then after that, want to leave it up to you guys to interact and ask questions. That first video goes out not only to YouTube, but it also goes out, just so you know, to your podcasts. So it goes out to all your, if you're on Apple Podcast or Spotify or whatever, Podbean, whatever you do, if you listen to podcasts. So you can listen to Retro Serial on podcast if that's your preferred method, but you can't interact on those platforms. You can only interact here on YouTube. That's what makes the YouTube Monday night such a special time. Chris, how are you doing this evening?
Oh, I'm doing all right. I got a case of the Mondays. I'll be honest with you. I'm dealing with. I don't want to get all complainy, all Gen Z on you, as you seem to want to dump on the Gen Zers. But
I'm only kidding. I'm partly.
I did not work today. My complaint is just perpetual pain. I'm having a shoulder thing, so But other than that, I'm awesome. New prog metal came out just the other day, so I've been listening to that. So there you go.
All right. Well, right on.
Speak of the devil.
Yeah. Well, we are going to get into that in just a moment. Before we do that, Thrash, why don't we say hi to who we've got so far, and then
Certainly.
Yeah.
Darrell Johnson says, I guess I'm a little early. Better early than late, I always say. Great to have you there, Darnell. Let's see.
Oh, good to have you, Daryl. Good to have you. Sorry.
Yeah.
This is my brother Daryl. This is my other brother Daryl.
Awesome to have you. Thank you, Daryl, for showing up.
We have Lance Cheffin in the house. Hiya, Ian and Thrash.
Hey, what's going on, my friend? Glad you could be with us.
You too.
Well,
we have Retro Serial in the house. There's a rare treat.
I saw your live show. Your live. I caught the tail end of that, by the way.
Me?
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, well,
Chris.
Thank you for checking in. Yes, I was. I have yet to do a live thing from this palatial studio that I do this from, and I decided I had 15 minutes to kill, and it was a new way of promoting. So hopefully somebody saw it. In a short amount of time that I decided to go on, but it was a success. Houston, we did not have a problem, so everything was good.
That's always the best when something doesn't go wrong.
Right.
Who else we got?
Hungry Jerk says hi, guys.
Hello, Hungry Jerk.
Guy after my own heart. I'm a hungry jerk too sometimes.
Does your personality change if you get hungry?
Oh, I get hangry.
Yeah,
I get hangry. It's the diabetic in me. It's bad. It's bad. I get. Oh, it's bad. It's no good.
Georgia.
Georgia, who's always on my mind, says hi, Ian.
How you doing, Georgia? Glad you could be
Georgia goes on to elaborate. Hi, gentlemen.
Georgia. How dare you call me gentleman?
We won't make that mistake twice.
And Mr. Led said, hey, guys.
Hey, Mr. Led. How you doing?
What's up?
And I believe that takes care of the hellos.
All right. Well, that'll be it for now. But as people filter in, then we'll go ahead and
flood in. That's just really. They're gonna flood in. I can feel it.
Yeah, I can feel it too. It sounds about right. Before we start, I wanted to throw this out, and I might throw this out at the end as well. But about this channel, it's all about growing up Generation X. Generally, we focus on pop culture and underground stuff, TV, movies, and music are kind of the main staples. But once in a while, we turn to something a little bit more serious. Haven't done anything serious for a while. But still kind of lighthearted, but like a serious look at Gen X. So we did like self-help was one program. We did marriage and divorce was another one. We did,
I'm an expert.
Yeah. Well, we just did stuff like that. But the other thing is it's just because the show is all about growing up Generation X, all the issues. And I didn't know if this would be interesting to you. Let me know. But the guy who is my wife's oncologist, Dr. Haslam, volunteered to come on and talk about cancer research through the 70s, 80s, and 90s. So let me know if that interests you. I could pull that off. I mean, we could make it interesting, but if ultimately you think it's a little too dark or you don't want to hear about it, I would understand. But if it sounds like something you think that it would, would be interesting to you, let me know. I'd really like to know before I schedule him, because he's a busy guy too, and so getting him to carve some time out to do this is a pretty big deal for him. And not like these lazy two. They just got nothing going on. And they just, no, I'm just kidding with you guys.
I have no life. I have none.
Anybody who makes
I
time
got nothing.
for
Got
my
nothing happening.
Right.
I literally, I think I said this during another live stream with you, but like I literally don't leave this space. Like I live in this space right here, and I wait for you to call me. And then I talk at you. So I mean, that's pretty much it. So when I'm not on the air here, I'm just sitting here talking to the posters.
Oh, gosh. Good night, man. All right. Well, make me.
I got Rush right behind me. So I got Getty and Alex right there. I talk right to them.
Right.
It sounds like a short story in like a science fiction anthology,
Yeah,
talk to his posters.
We call it liminal space. We call it liminal spaces. That's what it is.
Well, now I know that the drummer for Rush,
Neil Peart.
That's the name I'm looking for.
He's only the greatest drummer in rock history, but that's all right.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say he's regarded as the greatest drummer in rock history. Do you agree with that, or you don't agree with that?
I would have a hard time refuting that. I will say that I would be open to discussions if other people had because it's an impossible thing to quantify, right? Like what makes one person better than the other. What I will say is that, in my opinion, he's one of the most creative writers in terms of drumming. He definitely has proven himself to be as technically sound as any other drummer that's ever played, that's ever been in the game. And he wrote all the lyrics for Rush. So across the board, if he's not the greatest drummer of all time, in every single discussion that has ever got to be had about the greatest drummers of all time, he deserves to be in it. Let's just put it that way. That's the only way I can quantify it. So I can rattle off a bunch of other drummers like John Bonham and Bill Bruford and Ginger Baker, and there's a slew of drummers that are phenomenal talent and great players. Keith Moon, and these guys are great drummers. It's just it's a taste thing. Neil Peart just suits me perfectly, and everything he does is wonderful. And there's been many since him that have been just as phenomenal. Mike Portnoy and Billy Reimer, and there's just been a lot of great drummers. And like I said, it's an impossible thing to quantify.
Right. Well, that's interesting that he writes the lyrics. I didn't know that at all.
Never knew that till just now.
Every lyric ever since he joined the band, pretty much. I think he had some assistance on a few songs by a guy named Pierre Dubois. Wrote a few lyrics with him, but for the most part, actually not just the most part, almost 100% is all Neil Peart. So Getty and Alex did most of the music. Neil would write his own drum parts, obviously.
Yeah.
And he wrote all the lyrics. So that's kind of how they divvied everything up.
Wow.
As a band.
That's crazy. Because normally if somebody writes the lyrics, they want it, that's their voice. That's why normally that's the singer of the band. Because that's the guy who writes the lyrics is kind of it's their voice that's happening. So
Well,
that's unique.
it's an interesting thing. It's an interesting thing because in the I think it was the documentary Beyond the Lighted Stage, which is one of the best documentaries I've ever seen, which is about Rush. Getty talks about that at length, and you know, he goes into it and basically says that Neil was really good because Neil was very intelligent, and he used to write these, you know, even in the lyrics. My brother, who is a hair metal guy, he was very into hair metal or basic rock or whatever. He likes Rush, but he used to say things to me all the time just to kind of get my goat. He's 9 years older than me. He used to say things like, yeah, there's just too many words. There's too many big words in that Rush music. It's too many big words. And Getty used to say all the time, like, he would just come up with these words. And he's like, how am I going to sing that? Like, what? How do you want me to sing that? But like, he would find a way, and it would be very effective, you know?
Yeah, interesting. I wonder how his voice sounds. Is there any tracks of him singing anywhere?
Who, Neil?
Yeah.
Not that I'm familiar with. I've never, he doesn't, I don't think he knows anything. Like, he used to always say that he would break down a band as like being a singer is the scariest job in a band, but being the drummer is the hardest job. So
I would attest to that. I would attest to that.
Yeah, and he said he would never want to be a singer ever. He's like, being in front. As a matter of fact, he called his drum set the back line. And I never even noticed this until the last documentary when they were talking about their final shows together. He never, like, they would bow at the end of the show and he would never come out front ever because he was painfully shy, Neil Peart, painfully shy. And he would never come out front because he saw that as not his domain. That's not where he belonged. Until the very last show is when he came out front and took a bow with the other two guys all together. That was the only time he ever did that. He never, ever did that. And I'm not gonna lie, like, when I heard that and saw that, it kind of made me well up a little. Like, that was like a really like cool thing that, like, I just learned something new about my favorite band that I didn't even know. Like, to me, that's an amazing fact to know.
Have you?
So yeah.
Well, you were on.
How can you be in Rush and be shy? That boggles my mind.
He's painfully shy. Neil Peart would never meet people. Like, he would never meet with the fans. He would never like sign autographs. He was not that guy. Like, that was never his thing. And he got a reputation for being a jerk and for being kind of like cold shouldery and standoffish, but he just explains it. He's just shy. He likes being regarded as one of the greatest. He likes being respected for the work that he does, but it begins and ends right there. He doesn't want to be part of anybody's fantasy. You know, he wrote the lyrics to the song Limelight, and one of the key lines in there is I can't pretend a stranger is a long-awaited friend. And he lived by that. Like, he totally lived by that. And Getty and Alex were fine with meeting fans. Like, they had no problem with it. So they would do the meet and greet. That's what this is right here. This was me and my youngest, my oldest son met Getty and Alex on the last tour, the second to last tour, and Neil was nowhere to be found. So
yeah.
So he's just painfully shy. Just a very shy dude.
I know you were on a show with me and Pat and Ant from Rush Trader, but have you looked at you remember when we were talking about Ozzy Osbourne's guitarist? Have you ever looked at Rush Trader? Do you know him?
I scanned it quickly, but I haven't had time to really do a deep dive or anything.
Well, he does. Well, he's got a website too, but basically what he does is he collects bootleg live shows and unique performances, and then he gets people from all across the world doing all these bootlegs of Rush. So that's why it's called Rush Trader, is because they trade in Rush albums. I don't know if you heard this. I know we got some chats coming in. Let's see what we got. If we got some new people to say hi to.
Golden Rage of TV.
Hey, how you doing, Pat? Speaking of Pat, yes, he was on. He hasn't been on for a while. I'm going to get you back on. I'm trying. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to do one show on music, one show on TV, one show on movies, and one show miscellaneous, and kind of rotate that through just to kind of give everybody a little flavor bite. So people who are movies are here, and people who are music who are here. And the next time we get around to the whole music thing, I'm going to have you back on again real soon. So, and I'm loving your live stuff. I know you didn't do it for a little while. I wish you would. That was really cool. Yeah,
love your interviews. Great stuff. Oh, and he says, hey, my friends, I know a thing or two about the stuff. At least my shirt got invited. Ha ha. Thanks, Thrashman. Yes, Pat, this has become the Golden Rage TV shirt has become my official posting shirt. If you saw my last marathon where I did 100 views rapid fire, 10 back-to-back episodes in a 24-hour period, I wore this one the entire time. My wife had to throw it in the wash.
Oh, I would imagine. Whether it needed it or not.
Yeah, whether it needed it or not. We also have Denny State in the house. Denny Staten says, wow. And that was even before he heard about my shirt.
Right on.
Hi, Danny.
Right on, Danny. Good to see you, Danny. And I think we've got also Number One Dude is here as well.
We do.
Yeah,
Number one dude is in the house. Hey, Lance. Hey, Mr. Led. Well, hello to you, too.
Well, while we're on the subject and while somebody pushed this forward, I think Pat brought up this up right here, right here. Peart Went Through Hell. What do we know about this?
Yeah, Peart. So Neil Peart, back after the Test for Echo tour, which was 1996, 97, something like that, he went, the Rush took a break like they always do, end of an album cycle, and his daughter was killed in a car crash, and she was, I think, 21 years old, and it was his only daughter with his wife. And then a year later, his wife got like critically ill with cancer, and she died almost a year to the date later. Like, so he lost basically his entire family within a year. And that's what created, Rush went on like a 5-year hiatus after that. Was it 5 years? Yeah, it was like 4 or 5 years where they did nothing. And he basically motorcycled through Africa, through Mexico.
Wow.
Like, he just disappeared. He went on the run, essentially just on his own, and did his own thing and had to clear his head. And Geddy and Alex pretty much had said that they didn't expect to ever do Rush again. And it wasn't important to them at that point. They were just, these three guys were the tightest band that I think I've ever heard of.
So they didn't try to replace him?
Oh, no. To this day, like, if you watch, again, there's a documentary called Time Stands Still, which was about their final tour. And Geddy and Alex did not want to retire when they did. It was Neil that said, I can't do this anymore. I'm in my 60s. Do you know how hard it is to play Rush stuff in your 60s? Like, so, and he was upfront about it. I'd rather go out on top. I don't want it to start to look sloppy or bad. He's a perfectionist. That's how he did things. And, he didn't mean it as an insult, but he said, like, I'm not playing Charlie Watts, drums here for the Rolling Stones. I'm playing Rush, and this is not easy to play. If I was in the Rolling Stones, I could do this well into my 80s, but that's not what I'm doing. So, and then it turned out that, I don't know if they knew during that tour, but it was shortly after that he was diagnosed with the brain cancer and all that, and that would eventually kill him. So, there's a number of things, but like the physical ailments that he would go through throughout the course of a tour was really impressive for him to be so good that deep into his 60s is remarkable. But at that point back then, it was like the mid to late 90s. It was like the late 90s, and yeah, he went through actual hell. Like, he lost his entire family, and then thankfully he found someone new, and he got remarried, and then he had another child, and like, so he got to relive all of that and regain all of that. But God, like, I can't imagine what that would have been like. So, all right. Well, let's start out. Came back and yeah.
Let's start out with some. Well, we already started out, but let's hit some controversy here. Lance Chafin writes, "Oh, hello."
Oh, I'm sorry. I was John Collins says hello, Ian Bob. I had to say hi to.
Hi, John. Glad you could be joining with us. Haven't heard from Tracy tonight. I wonder where she is. I hope she's all right. And then I also another person.
APB on Tracy.
Yeah. The other person that I haven't heard from in a while, and I'm kind of worried about a little bit, is Spike Spikerson. He's been gone for a little while, so I hope he's all right. Shout
out Spike. Hope you're doing okay.
Yeah, and I hope you're doing okay. He just kind of disappeared here, so it was all right. Well, what was I was going to do the Pink Floyd one. Somebody wrote, "I
Oh,
love
yes.
Pink
Somebody
Floyd, The Wall."
said they like Pink Floyd The Wall. Yeah. So
Yes.
Lance Chauvin says, I
That's-
loved Pink Floyd's The Wall.
Well, that's actually my favorite Pink Floyd album of all time. I mean, I'm a big Pink Floyd fan. I'm probably a slightly better fan of Roger Waters. But I mean, Pink Floyd together with Roger Waters is the best. But if you ask me, Pink Floyd without Roger Waters and Roger Waters, I definitely would side Roger Waters. But that's not to say Pink Floyd's like, a distant second or something like that without Rod. They were still amazing.
David Gilmour's guitar work with Roger Waters, like songwriting, is just
yes.
I mean, it was masterful, and it's a shame that they hated each other so much.
I know.
I mean, it's such a shame. But my preferred Pink Floyd album would be Animals. That would be my preferred one. I love that album so much, and it's so funny because there's an artist named Steven Wilson who very much in his solo work emulates that album a lot. So it kind of was consistent in my life that was one of my favorites. And then like later on, Steven Wilson put out an album called The Raven That Refused to Sing that has a lot of callbacks to that album in particular. So it goes right in line, lockstep.
Right.
But you said controversy, so you're going to bring up my point on Pink Floyd.
Well, I just thought right away, we'll jump in whether or not Pink Floyd's a prog rock band or not. We want to say hi to Tracy though first. Tracy, I'm so glad
there she is.
I was just asking about you. I was like, oh, where's Tracy? Hope she's all right.
You got a shout out before you even got here, Tracy. Look at that.
Well, yeah, she's means a lot to me. So, all right, let's hit the Pink Floyd, not The Wall, Pink Floyd the band, whether or not it's a prog band.
Let's run into The Wall while we're at it.
Yeah, right.
Hit the wall.
Run head first into it. The short answer to the question of whether or not Pink Floyd is a prog rock band is yes, but the longer explanation is maybe, like, because honestly, like, if I don't want to argue with someone, I'll go, yeah, sure, why not? They're a prog rock band. But my problem with labeling them a full-on prog rock band is that they're so legendary and they've sold so many records and they're not a true to form prog rock band. They're more of a psychedelic band with progressive tendencies. Like they have their moments but they're not like, when you put them up against like a Genesis or a Yes or King Crimson or Rush, they're more outside of that. And
well, even from somebody who doesn't really understand prog rock, I can definitely, like, if you put those bands together and you said one of these things is not like the other, I would definitely point out Pink Floyd. I mean, Pink Floyd is definitely that psychedelic sound that enhances when you're on drugs. And even if you listen to it when you're not on drugs, you feel like you should be taking drugs as kind of a moral obligation. So I get it.
Well, but that's why the progressive rock metal thing is such an interesting thing, because it's an umbrella, or it's a whole country. It's almost like you take the United States of America, and like New York is so different than Kentucky, yet we're both American. You know what I mean? So it's like
Great
a lot
analogy.
of times, but then like, and it's kind of what it's like. But even with that, you get like someone, like if you get someone who's like dual citizenship from like, I don't know, Mexico. So like they're like Mexican and American. Like that's what Pink Floyd is to me. They're psychedelic and prog rock. Like they're a little bit of both. Like
that's a good analogy. Like I like that analogy.
So if I were to put like the thing that frustrates me about Pink Floyd specifically in this context is that whenever there's a list put out there of like the top 10 prog rock bands of all time, inevitably Pink Floyd is probably going to be number one or number two. And that's simply because they have two of the greatest selling rock albums of all time. Like without question, The Wall and Dark Side of the Moon are two of the most iconic biggest selling rock albums of all time. So
Right.
if you're going to put them on a list of anything, how are they not going to be towards the top? You know what I'm saying? Like, just
Right.
that fact alone. So if I were to ever compile my top 10 most influential prog rock bands, I might put them in there, but they would be either a honorable mention or like number 10. Like,
Mhm.
they contributed a lot to what prog rock became, but I can't put them as like the quintessential prog rock band. It's very frustrating to me when that happens. So
Well, let's get this out here, just because. Go ahead, I'd read that thrash for us.
I'm like, wow, what up without even me clicking? I was reaching to click it, and bam! John Collins says, in case I missed it, could you please explain the definition of prog rock? Chris?
okay. So the actual definition of prog rock, as opposed, so according to like actual like scripture or whatever, is a broad genre of rock music that developed in the United States and United Kingdom throughout the mid to late 60s, peaking in the early 70s, initially termed progressive pop. It was a style. It was an outgrowth of psychedelic bands who abandoned standard pop traditions and went in a broad spectrum of different directions. And usually, what would happen is it would start to bring in things like elements of jazz, folk, classical music, things like that. And because psychedelic rock, if you listen to like, because the certain traits of prog rock and prog metal would be long songs, conceptual lyrics, odd time signatures, a mixture of genres together. And this is where bands like, what Ian brought up in the video that we did last week, where he asked about, what was the band you asked about?
The Doors.
The Doors. The Doors are the perfect example of like a band that's more psychedelic than prog, but definitely toyed with that. They towed that line every once in a while of being a proto prog band, like the band that kind of started heading in that direction, but never really got there. And it's because they didn't do like 3-4 time signatures, or 7-8 or 11-8, or they didn't add reggae to their music, or they didn't put some jazz fusion, or they didn't start doing epically long songs like 15 and 17-minute songs and whatnot. So there are elements. That's your broad definition of what prog rock is, but then it gets a little more murky there, because now you get into like more modern stuff, and it's become increasingly more difficult, because you get bands like Dillinger Escape Plan is a great example. And I don't know if any of you watching have heard this, because if this is strictly a Generation X show, more than likely Dillinger Escape Plan is outside your general listening pleasure. However, they're an extreme metal band, very heavy, very, very bombastic and loud, screaming, singing, all of it. But the time signatures and the mixture of genres that go on with this music, but they don't do long songs. Like, the longest song they have in their entire catalog is, I think, 6 minutes, maybe. So they don't do like the typical type of prog thing. They do something different. And Rush is another one that abandoned the epically long song back in, like, I think the last really long song they did. There was Hemispheres in 78, and then there was a 10-minute song on Moving Pictures in 1981. And then after that, there was nothing longer than like 6 or 7 minutes. Everything else was kind of regular length songs, but still they kept their progressive roots. So, John, that was a
That answers it.
long-winded way.
I mean, no, it
Wait,
means
I was gonna say that was a long-winded way of saying. I don't know.
Do we have any?
Like,
any
I kind of know, but not exactly.
Let's do the comments section, Thrash, to see if anybody wants to chime in on some questions.
Danny Stanton says they couldn't do that stuff because they didn't last that long. Dude, like, died. Not really a
not
question.
Yeah, exactly. No, that was he's talking about the Doors, and that's and he's right. I
Jim Morrison
truly
died,
believe
yes.
that the Doors. Yeah, I truly believe that the Doors would have gone there, knowing the musicians that they had and the direction that they were going. I believe that Jim Morrison was a very conceptual person. They definitely would have gotten there, I believe. I think he would have caught wind of a band like Genesis or King Crimson and been like, yes, let's do that. Like, he would have definitely done that. I agree.
Well, he started out, he was a theater major. So theatrics was part of his raison d'etre. It's when he got thrown out for cheating, and his roommates, it was his roommates, was it? Or his friend of his roommates who said, want to come be our face man for a band? He's like, okay. But
I don't know if it's the best choice or worst choice he ever made. Got anything else going on here?
I'm just scrolling through.
Lots of things
Here's something. Daryl Johnson says, you going to do the Space Ghost theme, Pat? That would be cool.
I don't know what that.
He should also do the Space Ghost Coast to Coast theme. That's what he should do, because that's one of my favorite shows ever. So do both of them. If you're going to do one of them, do the other one too.
Trevathan Rossmeyer says, what about King Crimson or Yes?
Yes, big time prog rock in like they're like grandfather prog rocks for sure. Yes, for sure. King Crimson, absolutely. In the Court of the Crimson King is one of the proto prog albums, and like that is. It's funny because King Crimson has had such a long career, millions of albums, millions of lineup changes. Their family tree is gigantic, like from Adrian Belew to Tony Levin to, Bill Bruford. Like, there's so many guys that came out of that band and populated prog rock. It's insane. But the very first album, you can hear it from the beginning. 21st Century Schizoid Man is one of the most popular not most popular rock songs, but it's iconic that when you hear it, you go, I know that song. You might not know who it is, but you know the song. And that song in and of itself, time signatures, the just weird sounding nature of it. They mix different, different genres. There's horns in there. There's guitar, like distorted guitar. There's all kinds of stuff happening with that one song. And then the whole album is just wonderfully progressive. And Yes was probably one of the first bands to do, like, them and Genesis were probably one of the first bands to be popular and do the epically long songs, like the 15-20 minute songs, and be like selling out big theaters and arenas and stuff. I can't think of anyone else other than Genesis and Yes that were becoming viable and popular and selling out, and doing epically long songs and very orchestral and conceptual music like Genesis and Yes.
Do you think that's
maybe Frank Zappa?
Do you think that's just because they were a little bit more hooky? Their songs were kind of a little bit more radio friendly. I mean, just
maybe. I mean, there was a fair amount of other bands. Like there was Camel was around, and they would do stuff like that. And who was it? Gentle Giant was around, and they would do stuff. Kansas became something a little bit later, but I believe Kansas was more later on after Yes and Genesis had made it kind of a thing. So there were other bands.
I guess what I'm saying,
but
I'm wondering, like you think about a band like Genesis that sold out arenas. I think that a lot of those people are going to come for their short radio-friendly songs as well. You know what I mean? You're going to see a lot of those.
Yeah, but Genesis didn't have a lot of those until after Peter Gabriel. So Genesis has two separate careers. Like Genesis has a very distinct line of delineation for them, where they were popular for prog rock under Peter Gabriel being the lead singer, when they were doing The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway and Supper's Ready and The Firth of Fifth and the Fifth of Firth and blah, 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 and all that stuff, The Watcher of the Skies and those huge epic songs. And then Peter Gabriel left and Phil Collins started singing, and then they became more radio friendly and more radio viable with songs like Turn It On Again and Misunderstanding and Invisible Touch and all that stuff, which became which took them from like arenas and theaters to stadiums. Like now they're playing Wembley Stadium instead of playing Wembley Arena. You know, that was the difference. So
Right.
yeah, you're right on that. But I think Yes was definitely the more accessible band back then. And I think they probably were more popular than Genesis at first. I don't really know. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I'd have to look it up.
Yeah,
but,
it's all right.
But they were both equally influential and important to prog rock getting out there. And then there were other bands that were also highly technical, like Led Zeppelin definitely played a part in making progressive music, you know, because they did longer type songs too. Right. Stairway to Heaven, Kashmir, things like that. So
well, let's I know that we're getting a lot of chats in here. I just want to make sure we're answering the questions of the fans. So
John Collins says, so later Beatles albums after the Mop Top phase would have been prog rock.
So we touched on that. I believe that I wouldn't call them a prog rock band. However, I would say that they laid the groundwork. They could definitely be proto prog, like a prototype prog. White Album is definitely they didn't do enough within one song, so I couldn't. The only one song that I think I could pick and go like that's a progressive rock song would be like Happiness Is a Warm Gun is like the closest I could get to something that was so it had a bunch of different things happening at once. But if you take like full albums as a whole, Sgt. Pepper's was a concept album, and the Magical Mystery Tour would be there was a whole mishmash of different things going on. White Album is the perfect example of where you have poppy rock. You had Happiness Is a Warm Gun, which was this soulful yet mishmash of different genres and styles going at once. And then you had like Helter Skelter, which is like, in my opinion, like the first real metal song. So like, yeah, you could definitely say that the older Beatles albums were at least pointing towards what you could do. There was a lot of these prog rock bands that came after them that were no doubt inspired by the ingenuity that the Beatles put forth, for sure.
Cool. All right. What other comments do we have here? I know we got a number of them coming in.
We sure do. Mr. Led says, hey, Red Dude, you ever hear Star Castle?
No, I can't say that I have, but I'm going to put them down on my list here.
Yeah,
and take a look because, yeah, sure. No. Anytime somebody stumps me with a band that, I mean, I've probably heard them if they're anything of relevance at all. Yeah, I just looked them up, and yes, I've seen these album covers for sure. So, yeah, 1969. Oh, yeah. I mean, I've definitely heard of them for sure. Yeah, Terry Luttrell. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm familiar with this band. I don't think I recall listening to them, but I'm definitely going to check them out now, Mr. Leg, for sure. Not right now.
What
I'm
about
going to finish this first, and then
what about the Oh, go ahead.
Hungry Drink says, bye, Lance. Night, Lance. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you Wednesday.
See ya.
Peace, Hungry. Oh, Lance left. I'm sorry. I thought Hungry was leaving. No. Sorry. My bad.
No, he was saying goodbye to the guy who was leaving. Danny Staten, Meatloaf had some long songs.
So this is a good example of an artist who would do long songs, but it's not prog. Like it's not progressive. So Meatloaf,
like a lot of
Jim Steinman.
Let me pause you for just a second. I think like a lot of things. Sure. Like a lot of things, you have to have more than one element in order. I liken it to something like H2O, like water. Water is H2O. But just because you find hydrogen somewhere and just because you find oxygen somewhere doesn't make it water. It has to come together in a unique compilation. So with that kind of in mind, go ahead with what you're saying with Meatloaf.
Well, and like again, you could. I guess like if I listen to Meatloaf and I tilt my head a little bit like that, I can go, well, I hear orchestration and I hear, but like everything is your basic 4/4 pattern. There's not a lot of movement. Like it's amazing music. Jim Steinman wrote amazing music, and that's not to take away from Meatloaf. Bad Outta Hell is one of my all-time favorite albums. If I ever really want to blow my voice out and really get the higher register going, I definitely go and sing some Bad Outta Hell for sure. But it wouldn't fit in a progressive rock thing, just because a lot of it stays within itself. You know, every song on Bad Outta Hell sounds the way it does. You know what I mean? So, and not to say that Rush doesn't sound like Rush, but you can listen to like a song, like a 4-minute song like Spirit of Radio, and you can hear rock, reggae, you know, offbeat time signatures, all kinds of things just within 4 minutes. So again, not taking anything away from Meatloaf, but yeah, just because the songs were long. My main example always for long songs that aren't progressive is like Inagata Davida by Iron Butterfly. It's like a 17-minute song. That is not a progressive song. It's psychedelic. It's epically long. It's not progressive. It just kind of does the same thing. You know?
It's hydrogen. It's oxygen. It just is not in. It's not in its H2O form that we can look at it and call it water.
It's a lot of hydrogen.
Right.
What else we got?
John Collins says Blue Oyster Cult.
Sure. So Blue Oyster Cult's one of those bands that kind of treads the line. They remind me a lot of Pink Floyd, not in their sound, but in the sense that they do a lot of progressive things. Maybe they're not fully in the progressive rock realm, but they're definitely, you know, they definitely get consideration for what they do for sure. Let me look them up real quick because I'm curious to see.
Well,
I'm curious to see what they're listed as. You guys can continue, but
go ahead.
Oh,
sure.
I recently dug up.
No, you're not allowed to talk.
I dug up something on Blue Oyster Cult a while back when we were doing soundtracks, much like, you know, Pink Floyd did The Wall and Queen did Flash Gordon. When Blue Oyster Cult was approached by the makers of heavy metal, they had it stuck in their head they were going to do the soundtrack. So they didn't just write a single track for the soundtrack. They wrote like an entire conceptual album. And the makers were like, pass on everything else. We just want this one song. They took literally everything else and turned it into Fires of Unknown Origin, which is why a lot of those songs sound like they should be in heavy metal.
Interesting. Sure, absolutely. That's a good little tidbit. And just so you know, if you ever want to. So I know Wikipedia isn't the be-all, end-all, but they've really gotten better at nailing it down. Like, if you put false information on Wikipedia, they do a really good job of weeding that out. Like, they do, you know. And whenever I have a question about a band, like, they usually give genres and they list it out, right? And it's just like when, like, you're looking at food and you're looking at the ingredients, and like the number one ingredient, the first thing listed is like what is the most that's in there. You know what I'm saying? It's the same thing here. So genres for Blue Oyster Cult is listed as hard rock, heavy metal, occult rock, and then progressive rock is number 4. And that's exactly how I would view them too. Like, I think they have a touch of progressive rock. Like, if you listen to like Don't Fear the Reaper, the majority of that song is just a regular rock song or borderline metal song. But then you get to that middle section where things get a little like, you know, it gets a little crazy for a few minutes. But still, it's still in 4/4. So they don't really, you know, differ from their original thought. They just do a different sound. So I think they have elements of prog, but I wouldn't call them a full-on progressive.
Yeah. Well, one of the you know, in defining music, one of the bands that I talk about a lot is The Cure. And The Cure, to me, is a new wave band that pushes the boundaries, but they're still new wave. I mean, at the end of the day, I can't call them alternative. They're still 2 feet in new wave and arms pushing the circle. But at the end of the day,
and they're also emo. So, you know,
there's
also that sub genre emo.
Right. Well, this
the gothic emo, right?
Might even go to the point here, because go ahead, read this for us, Thrash.
Oh, Tracy Rossmeyer says Helter Skelter was also proto-punk.
Yeah, absolutely. But think
Sure.
about this right here. This gets me thinking. Even that song Helter Skelter was covered by U2 and Motley Crue. Could you think of two different kinds of bands out there? This means
Right?
this means that it's like grandparents and their grandchildren. They go so far, but that means that a band like U2 looks back at the Beatles and says they influenced us, and a band like Motley Crue looks back at the Beatles and they say, hey, they influenced us, even to the point that both those bands redid that song. They remade that song. So yeah, I think
Now
that
I never heard
go ahead.
I never heard the U2 version, so I'll have to admit that. But I will say that I've heard the Motley Crue version, and they played it pretty much the same, and it's so heavy. And to me, the mark of a truly heavy song is when you take it out of it. Like if it's a song from the 60s, or like whenever I hear Anthrax like cover a Kiss song, and then they pluck it out of the 70s and put it in the new production, and they play it the same way, and it's like the heaviest shit on the planet. That just tells you how heavy the song is. Like it suffers from like 1960s production, you know? So if like the Beatles had 2022 production,
Right.
and they were able to do Helter Skelter, that would be the heaviest shit ever.
It would be really cool. It would be really cool. Yeah. Yeah. That's, I mean, that song, Helter Skelter, is accredited as being the first punk song and the first metal song. Actually, there you have people who've written on that,
yeah,
saying that it's both.
I can make the argument.
Yeah,
sure.
Either way, go ahead. If we have other stuff, go ahead. Thrash.
One thing really quick. Speaking of covers, have either of you gentlemen or any of you in the comments section watched on YouTube?
Chris isn't a gentleman.
Bad, Bob. Bad.
Neither.
It's a cover band, although they do a lot of their original material, but they're best known for their covers. They're called First to 11. Have either of you guys checked these guys out?
No, I'm going to write down.
They're absolutely amazing, and they just did a cover of Metallica's One, which is my all-time favorite Metallica song.
Wow.
I read that book when I was in high school. Loved the film, and I was astonished that Metallica was able to make basically a mini rock opera to it. And they did a cover of it. It's absolutely amazing. The group is called First to 11. They also do covers of Kansas. They did a cover of That Thing You Do, which was very, very cute. But you have to check out this Metallica one.
It's one of my favorite movies ever.
It's an amazing movie. It really is. And like I said, I read the book when I was in high school.
Oh, I thought you were. I'm not talking about that one. You said That Thing You Do.
I like that movie too.
No, that's a good movie too. But That Thing You Do is one of my all-time favorite movies.
It is a great movie.
Wow.
Let's see.
I wouldn't guess that. I've seen it like one time. I was just like, okay.
I've seen it about 5 or 6. Oh, Danny Staten says, this conversation is so far from my head. Too much smoking, I guess. I just don't know. I like the music or the singer.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way. It's funny that it frustrates me, and I talked about this on the video with Ian earlier in the week, and I'll expand on it further. Prog rock fans and prog metal fans, not all of them, but a large portion of the audience are a bunch of cork sniffers who just feel that they're better than everyone else because they like this music that is so technical and out there, and you just don't get it if you don't like it. It drives me nuts. Like, I just happen to like the music, and yes, it appeals to me if it's a longer song with more stuff to it. It's just that's just something that has stuck with me through the years, and this example plays out that, like, I take the band Dream Theater, for example. Dream Theater is one of my favorite bands since the early 90s. I grew up with this band, like, literally, like, they're from the same place I'm from, on Long Island. So I know them, like, I've run into them personally. So I love this band. I absolutely despise their latest release, their last album. It was dog shit on a CD. Like, it was just not very good. And for a multitude of reasons that I can go into, but I won't. But the main reason is because their lead singer has just lost it or they're not writing well, which is weird. I'm starting to turn my opinion around on the singer because he's put out 2 solo songs and they're way better than what Dream Theater was doing. So maybe Dream Theater is just grown stale. I don't know what the reason is. All I do know is that they put out this new album. I listened to it 4 times. I tried to like it. I really did. I was like, it was one of those things where I'm like, this is one of my favorite bands. I really should love this. And I just didn't. I just did not. And I still don't. So,
okay.
You know what? I forgot who it was.
I'm going to throw out something. I want you to, I want to hear about it. Okay.
Okay.
Faith No More.
All right.
Faith No More.
Faith No More.
One of my favorite bands. One of my favorite bands.
Me too.
Prog?
Mike Patton is the best singer. To ever do anything. Like, he's amazing.
But you can't have it.
So that album that you just referenced is not Prog. The Real Thing is not. The Real Thing, and it's so funny to me because if you ever want to know, I will say this: Mike Patton is progressive. Okay.
Yeah.
Faith No More as a band probably is too. I'm curious to see what they're listed as, what their
there were some
is, but
songs on there that were just crazy, especially on the deep cuts. I had that album, I played that back and forth. Yeah.
But I mean, if you listen, like my favorite album from them is King for a Day, Fool for a Lifetime. And that is hands down my favorite. So yeah, so they're not even listed. Check this out. So they're not even listed as progressive rock, but they're listed as alternative metal, funk metal, experimental rock, which is kind of like prog rock, and post-punk. All these things apply. I would even throw in progressive metal in there or progressive rock as well. They the thing that doesn't make them progressive rock, I would say, or progressive metal is that they don't do anything within a song that would throw the curveball in, that would definitely make it more of a progressive thing. They do things like, if you listen to King for a Day, Fool for a Lifetime is the perfect example. Like, I know that album inside and out. And you have heavy, punky type songs, fast, upbeat. Then you have like Starman, which is almost like a has like a Latin feel to it at times. And then you have Take This Bottle, which is like very slow spiritual type of song. Just a Man, which is almost like a gospel type song. And then like you just have everything just on this one album. Then you have super extreme metal songs like The Gentle Art of Making Enemies and What a Day. And like, so they do everything, and it all comes from Mike Patton with the band. But like, you can see they're another one, Line of Delineation, Introduce Yourself, and The Real Thing. They sound the same. Mike Patton didn't write a thing on The Real Thing. Like, he came in, and they even told him to try and sound like the guy that was on Introduce Yourself before, the album before. But once you get to Angel Dust, you can hear a distinct difference between The Real Thing and Angel Dust. Like, it's way different. So it's. Go ahead.
I get it. I actually forgot what I was going to say. But I remember now. It's but Mr. Bungle, would you consider that progressive? Like,
yes, their first album, definitely. Their early stuff for sure. Now the latest thing that came out a few years back, definitely not. That was like a straight thrash album. I forget what it was called. It was basically, they redid their first demo.
Yeah.
With Scott Ian and Dave Lombardo playing. That was thrash. Like, it was pure thrash. But the first Mr. Bungle is it might not even be prog rock. It might be avant-garde or art rock. It's fucking out there. Pardon my language, but it's out there.
So there's a question that I'm going to jump ahead. If I don't know where you're at, thrash, but go ahead if you got some more. But I actually have one I want to answer. So go ahead.
Daryl Johnson said the soundtrack to Forbidden Planet is trippy as naughty word.
As naughty word, right?
That's naughty word.
Naughty. Should I say it since I'm the naughty word guy?
You don't have to. I mean, I don't care if you cuss. It doesn't bug me.
Tracer Ross Myers says, "Why do people confuse progressive rock with alternative rock?"
I'm going to answer this first. I'm going to take the
I
lead
don't-
on this.
you go ahead.
On this, and
Please
then
do.
this is the one that I wanted to answer. So there's not a lot of overlapping sound other than both are rock, but there's a lot of overlapping concepts. And I was under this delusion too. Okay, so I didn't really know until actually way later, and that is both are listened to originally kind of underground by unpopular, like they weren't popular, they didn't have the big name people behind them, so they both attracted an underground following, and so sometimes people confuse it because of that. They both attracted kind of more loser-esque people. Okay, I don't mean that in a mean way, but quite honestly, the alternative rock and prog rock were the music of people who were picked on for one reason or another. Heavy metal was the music of the champions. That was aggressive. It was, I am the ruler of 9 worlds, and I'm going to get as many chicks and as much drugs as possible. And I'm the coolest on the planet, and everybody needs to bow down to me. Where both of these types of rocks were listened to by people who were either, into Dungeons and Dragons, or they weren't too popular. And then the other thing is a lot of prog rock, at least as I grew up, a lot of prog rock got a fair hearing because of alternative. When the alternative scene broke, then people were going, hey, well, what are all these other bands that are around down then? So you might have somebody who might pick up, say, a Pixies album that no one listened to before Nirvana, and then also go, oh, there's a Rush album over here. I know about Rush, but I never listened to them. And so they kind of run in the same crowd. But you're right, they're definitely not the same thing. If there's anything you want to add to that, Chris, go right ahead. But it's, why do people confuse the two? They are different kinds of rock. They are different kinds of rock. But I'm just trying to explain why somebody might confuse them. But go ahead, Chris.
The only thing I could think of, because I've never drawn that comparison, and I grew up in the 90s largely, and I don't remember that being a thing, like especially in the 90s where there was very clear progressive metal bands like Dream Theater and Queensryche that were still around, and King's X and whatever. But I can say that there are like 3 or 4 bands off the top of my head, like Alice in Chains was a borderline progressive metal bands at times because they did some wacky stuff, especially on Dirt. Primus for sure is a prog metal band, but they're also in the alt rock, grunge rock thing because they came out around the same time. Faith No More, as we just talked about, same time period, same, they went with that look and the whole thing. And then ultimately the one that would blur the line, if there's going to be one, is Tool. Tool is ultimately the one that's going to, because they are without a doubt a prog metal band and a prog rock band, but they were heavily in the alt rock grunge thing as well, in the way that they looked, the way that they presented themselves, and they popularized at that time. So if there was a blurring of the line, those are probably the main culprits. That's the only
Primus,
thing I can come up with.
Primus is a good example of that, because a lot of people who might listen to a Nirvana might also listen to a Primus, and then hang out with people who listen to Primus, and those people, they do drugs. No, and so you're going to do, no, just kidding. And those people listen to Rush or Dream Theater as well.
It always comes back to drugs.
And so they got to stay away from them. Yeah.
So John Collins says, Chris, do you enjoy 1960s anti-war anthems?
I mean, not as a practice, but I'm sure that I've heard my fair share that I've liked. I actually have a list on my channel, Redbeard Videos, of the top 5 protest songs of all time. So you can always go and check those out. I believe one 1960s song is on there, which was about the Kent State shooting.
For Dead in Ohio?
Ohio. Crosby, Stills. Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. Yeah. So I'm not against them. I like a lot of the 60s music. Like you know, with Turn and I'm trying to I can't think off the top of my head, like All Along the Watchtower and stuff like that. All Along the Watchtower is like one of my favorite songs, period, like in any genre of music. And so I can't answer that without looking into what I actually like. But I'm anti-war, so so it stands to figure I'd probably like those songs. So
What's your favorite rendition of All Along the Watchtower? No wrong answer.
oh, Hendrix, without question. The Hendrix version is so good that I don't even pretend that there was one before it. Like I just because it's one of the greatest rock songs of all time across the board. His voice, his guitar work, the rhythm section, like that, just it's such an on fire song. There are very few rock songs in this world that, even by Rush themselves, that makes me stand up and go, yeah, that song right there. I can hear that song at any time and be amped about it.
Right
My granddaughter just did a report in school on Jimi Hendrix. I was so proud of her.
Right.
That's awesome. Well, and interestingly enough, I have a video coming up soon on Prince, and I've been a huge Prince fan for forever, since I was a kid, and it occurred to me recently. Like, I know that I've heard him say, and I've read articles about him being heavily influenced by Hendrix. That's a duh statement. However, next time you listen to the song Purple Rain, think about Hendrix influence for a second. It's stunning. It's not even something I ever thought about before until I started doing a deep dive again. I said, wow, the way he sings it, the way he plays his guitar on it, it's very reminiscent of of Hendrix style of doing things. So
that was a good artist. I mean, really. I mean, I really did like Prince. There was a little bit there. There's some of his poppier stuff I didn't care for, like the Raspberry Beret thing. But his stuff kind of before that and even since that, it was good. You loved Raspberry Beret?
Love it. Great song. Wonderful song.
All right.
Raspberry Beret's a great song.
Trey Rosmeyer says it's a Bob Dylan tune, All Along the Watchtower. Yes,
he wrote it. Yes, he wrote it originally.
Yes,
and I will go on record and say that I very seldomly enjoy Bob Dylan. So I do not like Bob Dylan, and I respect him. He's a great songwriter. I just like when other people do his songs better.
I get it. I understand.
I was just having this exact same conversation. My mother, of course, is older than I am. She's actually from the 60s, and we were talking about it, how love Dylan's music, but like it when other people do covers of it. Like, I mean, his cover, his rendition of Watchtower, All Along the Watchtower. No, Hendrix is my preferred version.
Mine too. We actually covered All Along the Watchtower in the band I was in.
Really?
Yep.
Hungry Turk says, Tracy, Black Magic Woman done by Santana is originally a Fleetwood Mac song.
Oh, interesting.
Interesting. But trivia question: who is the other guitarist on that song besides Carlos Santana? He's a legend. He's a guitar legend. He was 16 years old.
Randy Rhoads.
Tell me when you're ready. Nope.
Legend guitarist, 16 years old.
Anybody? Wait. Well, I'll save it. We'll go back to it. Anybody in the chat know? Anybody in the chat know who was the second guitarist on Black Magic Woman? I believe he was 16 years old. He's a guitar legend.
Steve Stevens.
One of the biggest rock bands of all time.
No.
Nope.
Mick Mars.
No.
Eddie Vedder.
No, he is not a guitar legend.
Eddie Vedder is not a guitar.
That's a singer.
I'm
He plays the guitar. Okay, who? I have no idea.
Neil Schon from Journey.
Would have never gotten
really?
that in a million years.
You don't know who Neil Schon is? Come on, guys. Come on.
Oh, no, I know who Neil Schon is. I would have never guessed that he was on Black Magic Woman.
Oh, yeah.
I would have never.
No, Neil Schon. He's got an he's got this crazy afro and everything. It's crazy. It's insane. But I'm like, oh my God. I remember watching the video. I don't know. I didn't find out until about 10 years ago. And I remember watching the video, which I don't even know why I was watching it. It was just on, I think it was on a documentary or something. I'm like, I cocked my head to the side. I'm like, who is that? And then I went online and watched the video again. I'm like, that's Neil Schon, isn't it? And then I looked it up online, and sure enough, Neil Schon. I think he was like 16 years old playing with Santana. Yeah, that's a career.
Crazy. I did not know that. Huh.
That's cool. Yeah. That's really cool. Do you think that the speaking of bands like Journey and Loverboy and arena rock bands, do you think that that they were influenced by prog rock? Do you think that was?
Well, Journey was considered a prog rock band before Steve Perry arrived. So when it was just Greg Raleigh singing for them, their first, I think, 2 or 3 albums were pretty progressive. Very long songs and very jam band oriented, but like more in a progressive, like more contrived way, not like a Grateful Dead type of jam way, but more of a very specific, different odd time signatures, the whole thing. And they had, great drummers. Ainsley Dunbar came from Frank Zappa lineage. So like you had musicians in that band that were incredible. And then Steve Perry came along and brought more of a blues influence on their early stuff. And then by the time the album Escape came and Greg Raleigh left, that's when they got into like more commercial stuff with the album Escape, Open Arms, Don't Stop Believin', Who's Crying Now, that kind of thing. So, but if you listen to the first few Journey albums, which the name eludes me now, the names of those albums, but they were progressive rock. Like they were a prog rock band.
Yeah. Well, Steve Perry definitely.
So for Journey, yes. So for Journey, yes.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of other arena rock bands. They call them arena rock. They weren't that. I mean, they were popular for a while, but generally it was those bands that were played on couple skate at the skating rink. Be like, it's couple skate only, and then they'd play something from, I don't know, from Journey or Normally or something, Forever Yours Faithfully or something like that. So, all right. Well, what else?
A few of the very few of those bands came out of the 70s prog rock and were able to sustain being progressive. Journey was one of them. Styx was another one where they were generally a prog rock band, and then they were like, oh, Dennis DeYoung took over and wrote some ballads, and that's where they got their major hits, even though they had some decent hits with like Blue Collar Man and Renegade, and Come Sail Away was a big one, and that's a prog rock song. Like Come Sail Away is a prog rock song. Yeah. And then you had Rush, where they kind of cut out the long songs, but Tom Sawyer is an insane prog rock song, and that's probably their most popular song to this day. Spirit of Radio is another one. Yes, his most popular song is probably Owner of a Lonely Heart, and that's even a progressive song, even though it was way I don't want to say dumbed down, but like, just more palatable than your 17-minute, or like even Roundabout, which is a big song for them, but that's an 8-minute song,
Right,
so
right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I have a question for you. What about?
I don't know where I was going with this.
Alan Parsons. It's all right. What about the Alan Parsons Project? What do you think of them?
I don't know a lot. Well, I don't know a lot about them. What do I think of that? I mean, he's a great musician. I don't know a ton about them. I know the eye in the about sky, him. I know I know all the popular stuff, and he's written a ton for other people, and he's also very big on the engineering side of things. But like, yeah, I mean, he's a prog rock guy for sure. The majority of his stuff definitely falls in the more technical side of things. He got really into the keyboards and synthesizers and stuff like that, which was definitely a staple of late 70s, early 80s prog rock. So yeah, I would say he is for sure.
Let me give you.
It's not one of my favorites, but
yeah. Let me give you a definition of prog rock. I just want to see. This is just me after I've had this conversation with you last 2 times, and of course I'm not going to say that I'm going to do better than Wikipedia, but this is just what I've kind of collected from what I've learned from you, and then kind of repackaging it in my own words. Okay, so you tell me what you think of this.
If you say I don't know, I'm going to be very upset.
Yeah, no. All that to
No
say, I
idea.
don't know. I'm not a stand-up comedian, so I won't do that. All right, so prog rock is a rock band that's experimental, eclectic, and technical, and it's got to have those three elements to it. When you have those three elements to a band, then they're rock oriented, then they become prog rock. Would you kind of agree with that? That you would say that each prog rock band, you could say, oh, that's a rock band, and what makes them prog is they're experimental, they're eclectic, and they're technical.
I would say that's fair. That's definitely three of the things that I would like to see. There's a lot to it. It's not an easy thing to nail down. I mean, I've been doing a show on some form of radio since 2007 on this topic alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I have been yelled at. I have had arguments. I have been told that this band is not progressive. Why are you playing this? This is not prog music. Like, I've had arguments with people. I'm like, 21 Pilots, pop group. They're progressive at times. And they go, what? They're hip hop. But are they always hip hop, or do they do some rock stuff too? Do they do odd time signatures at times? Absolutely. Do they introduce different genres? Absolutely. Are they rock all the time? No, they're not. So would I put them solidly in a progressive rock or progressive music? No, I wouldn't. But I would listen to it. Like, I would listen to the argument. I would have the discussion.
Right. And this has nothing to do with whether or not we like a band. This has nothing to do with whether or not we like a band or whatever. We're just kind of talking about what prog rock is.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some things that you can just rule out. Like Kiss is not a rock band, a prog rock band.
Oh yeah.
However, they do have one album called The Elder, which is very much close to a prog rock album. Like, they definitely tried. They definitely made an attempt at prog rock. So, like, just because a band is not always prog rock doesn't mean they don't try sometimes to, like, attempt something,
Yeah, right on. Well, other questions? We got other questions here?
Let's see. We got one from Denny Staten here. He says, ever hear of the band HSAS with Sammy Hagar?
Oh, yeah. Isn't that with Michael Schenker? And I think that's Michael Schenker, right? Yeah, I'm almost. They only had one album, and I think it was a live album at that.
Yeah.
HSA. Yeah, Hager, Sean. Yeah, Neil Sean. Oh no, not. I'm sorry, it wasn't Michael Schenker. It was Neil Sean playing guitar with Kenny Aronson and Michael Shreve. Yeah, they had one album, and it was a live album, and it was on fire. Like, that's a great record. If you've never heard it, it's fantastic. Like, it's one of Hagar's best works, in my opinion.
Yeah. All right.
Not prog rock though. For this conversation, it's not prog rock. They're a glam metal or a hard rock band.
Hungry Drink says, I must admit, I like Loverboy.
Loverboy's good, man. That singer, I forget his name, but he's tremendous. I always forget his name.
It's some fun songs. It's not, you won't catch me listening to it, but I mean, I don't, I mean, if somebody likes, I used to be very judgy in my music when I was a kid, especially when I was young. I'm like, no, that band sucks and you're stupid. And
we're all douchey.
I used to all kids go through that phase.
Now today I'm like, well, you know what? Even if I don't listen to it, I'm glad people listen to it. You want to listen to that? That's fine with me. I tried to pretend I wasn't into hair metal. I literally have pictures of myself with long blonde hair, trying to look as much like Vince Neil as possible with the denim jacket, the cut up jeans. And a year later, I'm trying to look as much like Kurt Cobain and sound like Kurt Cobain as possible, and pretending that I never even liked Motley Crue. So that's the extreme.
I did the same thing, man. I've internationally publicly apologized for this multiple times, but I remember there was a 5-year period from the late 80s until the 90s, where my brother used to get me tickets to see Bon Jovi every year because I loved Bon Jovi. And I still do.
Yeah.
And every year, hey, we got tickets. Hey, we got tickets. And then when Pantera came out and Rage Against the Machine, and I was all of a sudden, I just drifted into that. And I remember he came to me. He's like, dude, got Bon Jovi tickets for the summer. And I'm like, yeah, screw that. I'm like, that's wuss music. Not doing that. It's not Pantera. It's crap. It was such a dick. Oh, it was such a douche.
And now I don't even care. Now one of my favorite bands to listen to when I'm running is Motley Crue. Man, I just, you gotta turn that fast music on.
I mean,
yeah, right on. What else we got?
Vince Neil makes me feel like a great singer, so that's good.
Well, listen. I have to admit, I got that. No, seriously, you convinced me, because I never did really think about that when he's live. So I went back and listened to all of his live stuff, and I'm like, good night, man. This guy, he's lucky he's in the.
Vince Neil should have been bagging groceries on the Sunset Strip, not singing rock shows in arenas. He sucks. Even on Too Fast for Love, you can hear his thin, awful voice. He stinks.
Yeah.
He's lucky. He's so lucky that music was so good and their attitudes were badass. Like, I still love Motley Crue in spite of him. I'll take that John Corabi album 10 times out of 10 over anything else.
I don't know about that. Anyway, I don't know about that album. But go ahead. What's the next one?
Mr. Led says, Red, where would you place Uriah Heep?
They're a prog rock band, not all the time, but I think they did enough that I would definitely put them in there. Mm. I like Uriah Heep.
Let's hit this one too, though. Says, wait. Let's hit this one. We don't want to forget our good buddy.
Oh, okay, of course not. John Collins says, Chris, how do you feel about so-called jam bands change your lineup so dramatically? Do you feel like they lose their luster as I do? I mean, like Fish and Chicago?
So I'll take the last part first, Fish and Chicago. So two completely different bands, in my opinion, in terms of the way they sound. Fish is interesting because Fish, the band, not a prog rock band. Jam band for sure. Trey Atanasio from Fish is in a band called Transatlantic, which is an epically progressive rock band with Mike Portnoy and Roy Nastault from Flower Kings and Neil Morris, formerly of Spock's Beard or whatever. So if you're a Fish fan and you like Trey Atanasio, the singer and the guitarist from Fish, I think he's a singer, but he's the lead guitarist from Fish for sure. If you like him, but you want to hear him do more technical stuff, Transatlantic, phenomenal. That's number one. Number two, Chicago, borderline progressive back at the beginning, but more of a, I don't know, jazz fusion. Different. Jazz fusion is different than progressive. It goes way more into the jazz realm as it does into the prog rock. But awesome band. Love Chicago. Loved them. I even loved the Cetera stuff. I hated after Peter Cetera left. I didn't love the 80s ballady stuff, but I do think it loses their luster, especially when God, I can't believe I'm blanking on his name now. The guitarist from Chicago. I'll look it up in a few minutes. But when he died, after he died, it made a huge. There was a big loss after he was not in that band anymore, and it changed their sound. I still like Chicago, but the stuff with him was way better. But I do agree when a band goes through a number of shuffles, especially when it's to major parts of the band, songwriters, lead guitarists, lead singers, it's hard to maintain. Very few bands have survived major lineup shakeups like that. So
I was hearing there was something going on with I can't remember. It was on Eddie Trunk's show. It was a while back. It was a rerun I was listening to on YouTube, where there's literally a band that every once in a while, one of the original members will show up to play the concert. But because they got popular prior to the MTV generation, people still come to the shows. They still play all the same songs, but people come to the shows. So they're not like the face of the band is not real recognizable. It might have even been like Yes or something like that. But
Terry Kath is the name of the Chicago guy. Sorry, I wanted to get
Mr.
that
Led
out before I
just threw that
forgot.
out
He
there.
got it. Mr. Led just said Terry Kath. Yeah, I completely spaced, and I had to look it up, and I was just searching the deep recesses of my brain. And I finally had to look it up. Anyway, I'm sorry, Ian. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was just saying about the people who
But
totally
I
changed
think
lineups.
one of the bands. Well, I think one of the bands you're talking about, Foreigner, has no original members at all.
Yeah, that was it. Foreigner.
Lou Gramm will show up on occasion. Yeah. Yes is down to, I think, just Steve Howe. I think it's just their guitarist. Styx is down. When you talk about true blue original members, Tommy Shaw is not an original member of Styx. So when you're talking about true blue original members of Styx, all you got left is James Young, and he misses half the tours at this point. And then you have Chuck Panazzo, the bassist, who comes on for one song per show, and that's it. So Tommy Shaw is not even original, although he was there from the beginning of their great years, so he's considered original. So that's a technicality thing.
What else we got as far as...
Tracer Ross Myers says, "Me too. I was punky in high school, but I admit I liked Van Halen and Bon Jovi."
Right on. Them both.
So she kind of ran the gambit. Let's see. Oh, I keep going back to that one. Let's just see.
Well, another band that you mentioned while you're looking for some is Africa. Or Toto, sorry.
Toto, yeah. Africa. Toto's basically a prog rock band in sheep's clothing. Basically, they just had a slew of hits that were not inherently progressive, but they wound up, a large portion of their... Well, oh, wow. Yeah, that's interesting. I just looked them up. I'm just looking at their designation. It says rock, pop, and jazz fusion. So I don't know, maybe even I misclassified them every once in a while. I thought they were more of a prog rock, but I guess maybe they're jazz fusion. I guess.
Yeah.
I guess if you're a rock band and you do jazz fusion, how could you not be prog rock? I don't know.
Skip Rock Jr. in the house says
Skip
Madonna
Rock,
has no original parts left to
her. That's true. By the way, when we're talking about alt rock, and as my comparison here, where I was talking prog rock, experimental, eclectic, and technical, I would say with alternative rock, not technical, they were kind of anti-technical. Now they became technical, but they were the kind of technical that they didn't want you to know they were being technical. They were so good at not being technical, they didn't want to be technical. They wanted to be raw and just kind of play the chords sloppy and stuff like that. Eclectic, they'd have to be eclectic because that was part of the original definition of alternative rock. Is it's like, well, we don't know what it is. It's strictly one type of music. So eclectic, yes. Experimental, partially. Experimental, I would say, alternative rock, partially. They didn't mind pushing things, but they weren't like experimenting with time signatures and things like that for the most part, anyway. So that would be the difference for me there. Let me throw this out too. We're kind of winding the show up here, coming up to about the hour and a half mark, and I want to make sure we, pay all our sponsors, whatever. But I don't have any sponsors. I'm just joking. That's just a way of saying winding down the show. But I do want to know, listen, everybody out there, don't leave anywhere yet, because I did ask this at the beginning of the show. I said, would you be interested in doing an episode on cancer research and how it's changed through the 70s, 80s, and 90s with the guy who's my wife's oncologist. His name's Dr. Haslam, and he would be interested in doing the show, or he said he would carve time out to do the show. But I do want to know, because that's a more serious issue rather than pop culture. But again, I drift into more serious subjects from time to time, although it's rare, but I'd be open to that. But let me know if you think that would be a good idea to look at, like have him come on the show and talk about cancer research. Then say so. And if you don't think it's a good idea, say it's not a good idea. All right, I want to do this last kind of question here for you, Chris. Unless something kind of comes in and it has to be answered, where would you want people to start if they say, "Hey, listen, I'm looking to collect." Let's say they're looking to collect, anywhere from 5 to 7 albums. Or look them up on YouTube. But back in the record store, when they go into the record store and they get records or tapes, and say, "Look, I'm interested. You sparked my interest. If I was to pick kind of like a place to start, you give me 5 albums where you would not this isn't Desert Island because you're like, oh gosh, these are the only 5 albums, but you're like, this is a good place to start. Where would you want to start? Where would you want to point people? 5 albums. 5 to 6. You can 6, and you have the right to change your mind anytime.
The thing with prog rock and prog metal is that I feel like you need a gateway drug. You can't ostracize people right away because I feel like it's something that will grow on people. Like there are certain people that despise like for example screaming, like in music, like the so-called cookie monster vocals or whatever. So like I introduced a friend of mine to this band right here, the shirt I'm wearing, Between the Buried and Me, and they have a lot of like cookie monster vocals, right? So but I introduced them to like a softer thing, that kind of got them into it. They're like, oh, I hear what they're doing. And then when they got to the more aggressive stuff, they were like, okay. But then after a while, they kind of turned it off. Like it was just too much. So if it's someone who's fully invested in prog rock, I'll go on that level. So I would say King Crimson and the Court of the Crimson King is a good place to start. Rush 2112 or Hemispheres is a good place to start because they're both kind of similar albums. One's a little more raw than the other. Also, Rush Permanent Waves is a good place to start too if you want a gateway drug, because that's more palatable Rush, where it's not as over the top progressive and in your face, and that has some like radio hits like Spirit of Radio and Free Will. Going down the line, if you want to get more into like the prog metal, you could do Queensryche. Operation Mindcrime is a good place to start because that's very palatable and it's very melody driven, but also has a technicality to it that can make you appreciate the musicianship. If you really want to get into the craziness of progressive metal, the guys who just are what they call the musical masturbation, where they're, a lot of this and like crazy stuff. You can get into like Dream Theater. Images and Words is a great album from Dream Theater. Or even more atmospheric and brooding type of prog metal. You get into like Tool. Enema is a great prog metal album. And then I guess to top that all off, I mean, I think I got to 6 already, but I'll throw a 7th in there. If you want to go a little more modern, get into the modern day stuff, Between the Buried and Me right here is a mixture of what Dream Theater brings from a technicality standpoint. They also have some atmospheric stuff. They're heavy. Like if you're into heavy, they're very, very heavy a lot of the time. And the album there, probably Colors, is an album called Colors. Or Parallax 2 is another one. So somebody's yelling. Get him. And that's it.
It's on my end.
That would be it. I mean, I can list off a million albums.
Right. Okay, well,
but I think that would set. But I think those are the albums that would set you up. I mean,
set people in the right direction. And probably we won't do this tonight, but if you were picking 5 songs or something like that, it might even be a little bit different. Well, okay. So tell me what you got going on over. Tell me what you got going on over at your channel, Chris.
So we're at Red Beard Videos. We are in the middle of our first official season. I know I've been on for a solid year. Okay. And I did 50 videos in a year. And I was pretty happy with that. Averaged about a video a week. I got burnt out and lost my creative juice. So I took 6 weeks off and I set forth a game plan to do seasons. So I'm in season 1. It's going to be 6 months long. Be videos every Tuesday at 9 a.m. A brand new video over at Redbeard Videos. and they're different episodes of the Fives, or I'm breaking down perfect albums, or I'm breaking down bands that you ought to be listening to, or I'm reacting to stuff. And then there'll be other stuff posted periodically, rants, opinion pieces and things of that nature. Also, another thing I'm doing a lot of lately is my TikTok. I know Gen X, not really into the TikTok. It's kind of embarrassing. I get it. But I'm doing some interesting things over there. If you're a sports fan, I'm doing a series called Mythology versus Reality, where I actually pick all the games based on the mascots and who would win in a mythological battle as opposed to reality.
Right on.
So,
Right on.
so I picked all the playoff series for like basketball and hockey. So I'm doing that, and it's at Redbeard Videos on TikTok. So check that out. Redbeard Videos on YouTube, Redbeard Videos on Instagram, Redbeard Videos on Instagram. Get it in your head. Redbeard Videos. It's the place to be.
Redbeard Videos, right on. Well, I'm a proud subscriber as well, and I have you listed on Friends of Retro Serial. I have a great debt of thanks to you because you were one of the first people to say yes to coming on the show, where a lot of people were not like, no. You were like, hey, yeah, let's talk about it. So thank you very much for being a friend of Retro Serial. Thrash Pondo Pons, what do you got going on over at your channel?
Well, the big thing is, in a commemoration of my finally getting 100 subscribers, I did a long-promised 100 subscriber extravaganza, and I did Are You Sitting Down? I did 100 what I call rapid-fire reviews, where it's not a full-length review, it's more just a recommendation, but there's 100 of them, and they're broken into increments of 10. I tried to do it all in one enchilada, but it kind of went off the rails. Right. So you'll see 100 subscriber celebration on my channel, parts 1 through 10. I literally, all I did was I randomly went through my movie collection and just grabbed 100. I wasn't even paying attention to what I pulled out. And then as I picked them up, Seven Samurai, Return of the Living Dead, and just boom, 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 boom. And that was my big project. I did it all in 24 hours.
Cool.
So it's a little unpolished, but it's out there. And I'm looking forward to bringing more of my wretched recaps and, of course, more of my top 10 worst dad jokes ever conceived of. So I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, you might say.
Well, that's good because you went from 100 to 122 in like a day. So that was pretty cool. That was awesome. All right. So you know what to do. Subscribe to these guys' channel. Like this video. Share this video. I'm up to 430 subscribers, trying to get me up to 1,000. And by the way, I'm at 1,999 hours of watch time. So I need one more hour to get to 2,000. Then they send me a really cool thing that says, hey, you made it to 2,000, and it doesn't mean jack squat. So but they send it to you and they say you've gotten 2,000 hours.
There's a point. Well, there's a point where they say, now you can make money.
Yeah, I know.
Really?
Not at 2,000 hours, but they do send you this little badge. Is this
truthful?
So I'm hoping so.
No, when I got past 1,000 subscribers, they're like, now you can make money. And I'm like, can I?
Really? You can. You just have to.
You tech conglomerate. You're gonna allow me to make money? Really?
Well, you can make money from them.
I will never stop cursing.
Make money for them.
Yeah, well, for them, but I don't care.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's what's you said not to curse. That's horse shit. That's what that is.
Is it?
Sorry, okay. Gods of YouTube, please don't hurt me.
Right on. All right. Well, everyone, thank you very much. Hey, if you want to donate, go to the Patreon page. And there's also a new way to donate. That's Venmo, and that's Singularity_Productions. And by the way, I am going to be looking at getting some merchandise, even though I can't sell it here on YouTube. I'll just send it to you. If you buy it, I'll send it to you. But I'm looking into getting that little logo that I have for Retro Serial, either like on a shirt or a mug or something like that. And then I'll just be using like Venmo or something like that for people to pay for it. You just if you want to buy them. Yeah. So I'm looking into that right now. All right, guys. Thank you very much. Really, really super appreciate everybody. You make my week. I hope that I make yours, and I hope you look forward to this on Monday nights. I know I certainly do. So take care, everyone.